Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on time. Today, we're going to talk about the bits and bolts. This is our weekly or bi-weekly, take coffee break where we hope you have a beverage in hand. And we're going to talk about some new features, workflows, or functions that we just want to bring to your attention. When I say we, I'm speaking about Stuart Clark, which is our Africa Territories Manager, and myself, Armaan Sami, who looks after the DACH and Netherlands territory for 42 years. Awesome. Today's topics, we're going to talk about general Android app permissions. This is a question that I get all too often. There's a couple things I want to highlight and kind of, let's say, talk about the differences of. And then Stuart will then talk about some SureLock plugin apps, which how to take advantage of them, how to use them, and where to do this. So as always, as we dive into these topics, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to drop them into the chat. We'll be very happy to go through them and answer them either now or afterwards, depending on when they come in. But we're going to hop over now to my Sure MDM console. This is just my test console. I have a Denso device here, actually, an MC50. And I'm going to be doing some tests on this today. So just to show you where we are currently with the device, I'm going to open the apps, and we can see that just earlier today there was a sync, and I have no Astro Contacts app. So that's the app that we're going to be playing around with today. There's a few ways to grant permissions. And what I wanted to do was kind of describe and explain while showing you the different ways to grant app permissions and highlight where you should be using one versus another. So just to start off, I'm going to come here to our App Store, where you can see we automatically come into Android. And I have Astro Contacts as an app in my App Store. If I click here, there's 3 different versions of it. And if I come here, they're not assigned to a profile or any devices at the moment. Now, as this is an app from the App Store, this means that this is a APK that we have actually imported and linked to the MDM console. If I was to come here and come down to application policy, system settings, applications, and grant the default application permission here, this actually would not affect these applications, these third-party apps. Where this profile and system settings default app permissions actually reflects is only if you're using a device in device owner mode and if this application came through the Play Store. So if I come here to the Play Store, if I hit add and I go for play for work, I'm simply going to take one app and it's going to skip through this. That's going to depend or make a difference on here, these Play Store application policies. So if I leave a value here as default, I have the option to switch between default, grant, or deny. Default here will automatically take whatever I configured earlier in system settings. So if I leave this as default and I had the system settings set to grant, it will automatically take that permission. But I can come in here and systematically, let's say, deny some features or some functions that I think should not be denied. And anything which is, or not be accessed by the app, anything which is denied here will override whatever is in system settings. And of course, I can grant or deny all permissions. Good, that's one. I have Astro Contacts here. This is from the enterprise applications. If I come here and hit edit, you see that I do not have all those permissions here. However, what I do have is auto grant permissions. And this is a checkbox that you can check here. There are a couple limitations. So for starters, in this approach, enabling this option to grant all necessary permissions supported. There's an agent version, which is relatively new that you need to be having in order to take advantage or use this feature. So just keep that in mind. You should be using 24.48, which I think is about 6 months or so old at this point. But this is not, I should say, my most favorite way of using these permissions, of being able to auto grant, because this does not encompass all the different permissions which are available. And there are a few more which are available. If I close this out and I come here to jobs via a new job, Android, if I scroll down here, application permission. So how I actually prefer to grant app permissions is here. Let's just say grant app permissions. I'm just going to name that, or let's say apps. I'm going to come here and click add. And then I can come here and choose, for instance, Astro Contacts. There's 3 different ones here because they're different app versions, but it doesn't matter. Just pick one. They all have the same package name. And these values here are not dynamic. They're all static. So whether or not Astro Contacts has access to call logs or camera, it doesn't matter. It's going to take it from the system, or it's going to take it or apply it to that device. So for instance, here, we're also going to see that there are a lot more options down at the bottom here. They're color coded. And you'll notice that before, device owner was just in profiles, that was a requirement to be able to grant these permissions. Versus we have platform signed. Platform signed means that there is a enterprise agent or a SureMDM plugin installed. If there's a Zebra device or a Samsung device, there's other permissions which will work or will not work. What is, I'd say, pretty interesting or important to note here is that in almost all cases, if you are using a regular device enrolled in device owner and you have a plugin, the vast majority of these different functions or permissions are allowed for you to grant, with only a few exceptions. So what I'm going to do here is just come up and I'm going to grant, and sadly here there is no grant all option, but this is an activity that you do not have to redo very often. So I'm just going to come here and go grant. And for the moment, I'm just going to do these generic ones, but there are a few app specific ones which you can also down here enable. What is important is a lot of these, especially these apps or special app accesses, are done on request. So if there is a feature or a setting that you find yourself enabling often, just let Stuart or myself know. We can put in a request to get it added. But I'm just going to come down here and then, yeah, let's just say we're going to grant and then push OK. It is now added down here at the bottom. So come in here and you can just add in as many different apps as you want and go through and grant whatever permissions are required. So make one policy, add as many of them as you want here, and use this to be able to kind of distribute or grant all permissions. So by the way, just keep in mind, there is also I'd say for the most functions and features, I think this version, the 27.44, again, earlier this year sometime. So you do have to have a relatively new version of SureMDM agent to take advantage of these features. So if you hit save, you then have one here. I'd made one earlier. And if I come over now, let's say I wanted to use this permission and I want to push this to a device. There are, of course, a couple ways to do this. As we mentioned, or I've mentioned multiple times before, there is, of course, the option for you to combine this in a composite job where you can link these or list of different things. So I'm going to come here just as a quick example, that default profile, and then I'm going to add the permissions, and I could add anything else and save it. This is all pretty straightforward. However, there is another approach you can also try taking, and that is to instead come over to profiles. And when you are here in application policy, you can also come and add job shortcuts. Now, a job shortcut is pretty interesting because theoretically, I mean, not theoretically, you can come in here and you can take any Android job that you have created and you can find it here and add it to this list as well. So for instance, I made one for permissions earlier, but you can scroll through this and add some different activities which you have on the other side in jobs and have it here as well. So Depending on how you want to configure it or how you want to use it, it's all up to you. Again, both will work the same way. They're just all using different APIs or different backend mechanisms to do things. The reason that the jobs has the most is because this is using a mix of many different APIs or protocols. It's figuring out which device you are using, versus in profiles, it's only taking one standardized Android enterprise approach. That's why there's differences. So just to take this device really quick, my bits and bolts, just want to show you what this will look like. I'm going to apply that default profile to this device, and I'll open up a remote screen capture so you can kind of see what's going on. But essentially, just want to show you that Astro Contacts is going to get installed. Nothing happening yet. Installed by admin. And now this is Astro Contacts is sitting on this device. If I come over and I go to App Info, you're going to see that no permissions have been granted. I'm going to come over here to Profiles, the same one which I have. I'm going to hit Edit. I'm just going to check the box Auto Grant Permissions. Hit Save, just to kind of show you how I would test or how I would see if the profile, that checkbox is going to be enough. I'm going to apply it again. And then what you should see in a moment is I think 1 or 2 of these permissions will get approved, but not all of them. No, I take it back here. Sorry, all of them actually with that checkbox did get approved here. So that one all looks good. However, there are some applications that will have some external, some other permissions that would not. And then, for instance, if I just come back here and show you these ones here, if there was an app specific or special app access, these are usually not covered, or with some exceptions, in a device owner checkbox. So you might have to come in here and do it manually. But that's how you can grant permissions on Android devices. Again, keeping in mind the different types of apps that you're using, how you're pushing them to a device, a combination of just using a profile or jobs to be able to do this is going to be, let's say, recommended or a good approach. What's also quite nice here is if you have turned these on, you'll notice that they are blocked and you will not be able to disable them or turn them on at a later point. Just keep in mind, again, this is not dynamic, this is static because it's an app from the Shure MDM store, meaning if a new version of the app gets pushed, just keep in mind if this new version has a different permission which is required, it might require you to either push the profile again, and that profile should have that same checkbox. To auto grant, or if you're pushing it just via a job, just make sure to push the application permissions job as well to auto grant those permissions. You can do that all within one step again via a composite job or that checkbox in profiles. Good. I don't see any questions, but if you have any or something comes to mind, please just drop it in the chat and I'll be sure to answer it. With that, I would say, and right on time, Stuart, I'm going to hand over to you. I just got a severe weather warning.
All right, guys. Well, as Armaan mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm going to chat about the plugin apps on SureLock, and I know that for many of you this may be something that you're familiar with, but it seems to come up quite regularly, at least in the region that I look after, and so I thought it was worth spending time explaining. As I said, specifically what those plugin apps do, and then the couple of different ways of enabling them on the actual kiosk environment or the SureLock environment, as we call it. So I'm going to use the manual, at least in the beginning, and for those of you who've looked through the manual, you may recognize this. This is a SureLock manual specifically for, obviously, for Android that we're talking about, and we mentioned under the plugin apps I didn't count them first, about 10 or so plugins that we have available, and you'll see that they all represent what I would describe as system values or configurations, or those abilities to turn on something or turn off something that would normally have expected a user to have access to the notification bar or to system settings on the device. And so the concept of where the majority of us would use a SureLock or a kiosk environment would mean that we are ideally trying to restrict the user's access to those specific things. Let's use the notification bar as an example. And so these plugin apps have been created and allowed for you to be able to make use of in a scenario where, and I'll take a flashlight as a very simple example, you may have a user who needs the ability to toggle the flashlight on and off during their day-to-day operation of using the device. But as we all know, access to the flashlight would mean that they would need to either drag down notification bar or have another key or access to be able to turn that on and off. And so enabling our flashlight manager, as a very simple example, would allow a single button press to be able to turn that on and turn it off. And so I'm going to run through the others and just a brief explanation. In fact, I've taken some screenshots of them enabled on a device, a test device that I have to give you an idea of what is included. The one that you're not going to see me mention is Phone Manager. And the reason is because Phone Manager was historically or is in place largely to be used by our customers that are using SureLock as a standalone application and want to be able to restrict the ability to be able to or the user's ability to be able to make and receive calls and some other things that would be associated with using what we would term a phone on the device. In our integrated SureLock, the one that the large majority of you would be used to using within SureMDM, that is not as relevant anymore because we have a specific phone settings tab within the SureLock settings available in SureMDM, for example, and I'll show you that. So let me have a quick look. I just want to share these screenshots with you to give you an idea of what you're likely to see in some of these plugin managers, and again, or plugin apps, and again, very, very specific functions. And you will notice that a large number of these also have the ability to password protect. And for those of you who attended our session last week, the app configuration that Armaan went through and showed you is a very simple way of being able to pre-create those passwords by application. And if anybody has any questions on that, we can run through it again. So APN Manager, obviously exactly what it describes, the ability to be able to potentially override an APN that has been pushed to the device through the various APN enablers that we have, either profiles or through the scripting method. Let me move to brightness settings. Again, a slider or an ability to be able to turn on the auto brightness value. While we're going through these, keep in mind that if somebody had within your configuration or peripheral setting enabled or disabled the, let's say, brightness, for example, and had specified an exact value, these switches, for sake of a better word, for example, this auto brightness switch, would remain grayed out because you have on a, let's call it a management level, decided that the user is not allowed to be able to switch on auto brightness. Or perhaps a better example would be something like turning off Wi-Fi or turning on a hotspot as an example. Bluetooth Manager, exactly as I described, the ability to be able to not or give the user access to be able to pair a Bluetooth device without exposing them to the full Android settings environment, which is as we want to protect. Flashlight Manager, as I said, as simple as a single button to toggle both turning on and turning off the flashlight. Hotspot, ability to be able to enable a hotspot from that specific device and obviously share it. And again, a reminder, you will see in this one, it's grayed out. My policy in SureLock on this particular device had disabled hotspot, and so it obviously wouldn't be available to a user trying to do that. We have a plugin called Security Manager, which allows the user to be able to set up a new PIN on the device, again, provided this was allowed. And then the last few, a little more detailed, Settings Manager, for example, will allow you the ability to be able to switch on, for example, data roaming, select the default SIM for mobile data, and various other things related to, I guess, those that would have traditionally been found in our Android settings environment on the device. Volume control, again, the ability to be able to change the various volume inputs, as well as select your mode through ring, vibrate, silent. And if you had, and for those of you who've played around with our volume control setting in SureLock, you would know that you can also specify a minimum and maximum value. And if you would enable those, your volume control app would only allow you to be able to move between those specified values, maybe a 50% and a 100% as an example. And then lastly, Wi-Fi center. Again, similar to Bluetooth, the ability to be able to pair or connect to a Wi-Fi network or potentially disconnect from a Wi-Fi network if you have allowed the user to be able to do that, is available within the Wi-Fi center enabler of SureLock. So you'll see I've run through the majority of those, as I said, other than the phone manager. And then let's take a quick look at the way to be able to enable those within SureLock. There's two ways. The first, and again, this would depend on how you potentially would like your users to experience this these plugin apps. I had pre-created a job, so I'm going to hop straight to that just to get those screenshots for you. But where you would notice these firstly is under the allowed applications. You will see that I have added, and these were available in your ad app where you would have normally selected any of the applications that you're expecting a user to have access to. You'll see all defined. The common Gears 42 is kind of the, I guess, package name that allows the enabler of all of these. So easy to find if you're searching. And you can obviously very simply add each of those that are required in this environment. And these would show those plugins that I'm going to show you shortly on my device as an icon on the SureLock desktop, which can easily be selected by the user. There is a second way to enable these, and perhaps more useful for those of you who are not wanting to make these obvious. Perhaps I guess almost a second function or something that you would direct the user to while making use of SureLock, or perhaps explaining to them how to go about changing a particular configuration on the device. And that will be within our SureLock title bar settings. I'm going to quickly use our search bar to find it. And we have, as you would have seen in a previous episode, the ability to be able to define various items within our title bar. Some examples that we showed in the previous episode was, for example, an EMEA, a serial number, MAC address. We have a fairly comprehensive list of items that now our users generally, or our partners and customers generally, have looked to add to the title bar. Options obviously to be able to adjust font and size and position and colors. But what you will notice towards the bottom is enable plugin apps. And by enabling plugin apps, I have the option to be able to check any of those that we covered just now, which will be available as a gear or settings icon that I'm going to show you within that specific title bar or the plugin that you've enabled within the SureLock environment. So for now, I've added just volume control to give you an example, and you will see I have enabled this job already on my test device. And let me take a remote of this quickly to be able to show you. You will see as I described the full size icons for those plugin apps as I had selected where I had added them within our allowed apps function. And again, just showing you what we had done a little bit earlier. If I was to click on Wi-Fi Center, it will give you those networks that are available and offer the user the ability to be able to either connect or disconnect as potentially needed. And over here, as you will see, we have our title bar. In this case, I left the default text. And now, because I've chosen the plugin app, you will see the option to be able to click on the settings gear. And I have, in my case, where I had only enabled volume control, a much, I guess, neater or slightly less visible function in order to be able to make some changes within those plugin apps. So choice, again, totally up to you. If you had perhaps a desktop with a large number of icons and there was no need perhaps to be able to add these, or they are perhaps less commonly used than some of the others, feel free to use a combination of what you feel should be directly available on the user's desktop, or those that you add within the title bar from a SureLock perspective. And I've seen many of our partners and many of our customers make a very useful kind of definition of those plugins for the users in the field. I guess perhaps just while I'm here, again, a reminder that within the manual, for those of you who are wanting to use any of the title bar settings, we have a complete list. Do a search quickly just to give us, and I'm sure we can perhaps even add this into the. Here we go. We have a complete list of those variables or those values that we can, those wildcards that can be added into that text field. And a reminder that that text field is a free text field, so you can have free text as well as variables or wildcards included in whichever of those that you choose to display. So feel free for those of you who are using or making use of the title bar, want to look at using the title bar to include some of this at the same time. It's all within that same job that we're going to share. As always, for those of you who'd like to have a chat to our partner marketing team or Gabby specifically, please feel free to reach out at partnermarketing@42gears.com. And then technical support, as I've mentioned a few times, available via various methods, but email obviously techsupport@42gears.com. Web ticket, intercom button, telephone, you choose whatever is most easiest for you in your region, but the team is available 24/7 to be able to assist both our partners and our customers for anything that they might need. All right, super. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure. See you in 2 weeks' time.
Cheers. Bye-bye.